Hey everybody, this is a brief lecture on instructions. We're going to look specifically at a sample of instructions, written instructions, and look to what was well written and what could be improved. This particular lecture accompanies the main lecture, which is a review of main points from chapter 27 on how to write instructions. So do see that lecture too, so that what I go over here makes more sense. So here we have a title, which is bolded, which is fine, and then we have an introduction about the topic at hand, the task of recording official minutes. The title's clear. Some people might say, why do I need an introduction? Well, because it can lay out the purpose. And in this case, it tells us that it's vital, selling us a little bit on its importance to the overall success of the organization, and reminds us that if they're skewed, we can have legal problems. So then it makes the nice move, which is often a secondary move, which is, why should I read this? Why bother? In the introduction, we now have a launch pad into it. So following are a series of simple but important steps to ensure, again, accuracy. So that is the prime purpose of notes, and it's all nicely, tightly written in this introduction. So we see that there are two blocks here. One is prior to the meeting, and the other is actually steps to be taken in the meeting. And we'll go through that. Let's go through the first one. We note that these are all bullets because they really are simply almost a list of parts or equipment. In this case, the parts or equipment needed are a notepad. And notice that the parenthetical is put in italicized font so that we can offset it slightly. You risk some when you put in things into parentheses. You risk people either blowing past them or feeling like it is cluttering the page. So one way around that is to footnote. Another way around that is to sometimes make it a subpoint. So for example, in this case, you could, I think it's overkill, I would not, but you could go to this point, right? And then take it out of italics and perhaps have one other point about it. So the size is what you make it. Just be sure it accommodates whatever surface area or desk you have to write on. That would be possibly if I were to do two subpoint pullouts out this main point. All right, 2-3 sharpened pencils with functioning erasers. Well, what happens if I have a mechanical pencil, or why go this route? You can see often in instructions we don't go explicitly into absolute descriptions or validations of every point, especially in a parts list. At this point, we've done our why and our purpose statement up here. Down here, less so. And that's why, even with this parenthetical, you have a decision to make, because you realize that too many parentheticals will clutter it. I mean, why do I have to explain everything, right? And that's the point of instructions too. So you have strapped in for the ride. And in this case, you're going through what the person is sort of using as their protocol. All right, you'll need the minutes from the previous meeting, and up-to-date agenda. Notice this parenthetical is interesting. Make sure you check with the chair prior to meeting to make sure you have the most recent agenda. Chairs are notorious for updating at the last minute. So that's a lot of words, would be the only caution point here. So an up-to-date agenda, if I wanted to make that slightly slimmer and trimmed, I might say make sure to check with the chair. They're notorious for updating at the last minute. Perhaps I would slice it to that. All right, any necessary handouts for the body? A bottle of water for a little bit of humor here to appeal. Well-hydrated note taker functions more accurately. Sometimes you can get into the trite when you can trip into that. It can be, this is more of a recommendation than most people would say a requirement. So that is a call you'll make. And sometimes by using humor, people can forgive and see that it's a recommendation, not necessarily requisite. So interesting. Make sure, really, do we have to absolutely make sure of this? So we can push back a little bit on the instructions in this case if I want to be real picky. Complete these steps. By the way, this whole particular example comes from a site that is well venerated for tech writing, and they lauded these as an example of better written, improved instructions from a bad example. And as we can see, we can possibly tighten it even more. Complete these steps in this order. Do not stray from the chronological list as done so. So we know instructions should have an action point, and they should have the most important item within the instruction step at the front of the step. So choose a seat. In this case, we just did it in bold. You could do it in caps. You could do it in bold. You can do it in bold caps. But again, notice they're action verbs, and we're trying to keep that parallel. So we'll see choose, open, note. So we'll choose a seat close to the chairperson, facing the audience. You want to be able to hear clearly from both directions, so it explains why in the second phrase. Oftentimes the second phrase helps explain why to take that action, or it shares a result from the action you take. All right. We open the notepad to the first page. We place a heading at the top of the page. Notice there are multiple instructions in this step. You risk that a little bit. So think about that. There are different ways to do this. Again, here it's not bad because it is all congruent, meaning it's a one move technically with sub-steps in it. So open the notepad to the first page, place a heading at the top, identify the organization's name, get the meeting date down, and circle the date possibly to ensure proper filing. Now again, depending on how linear you want to make this and how user-friendly, some people might feel tiresome about explaining sort of rationale for every move. So sometimes you might want to think, oh, do I need to footnote that? And that's a call. I will not grade anybody down either way. I'm just making note of that. All right, note the official time when your chair calls the meeting to order. Take a quick tally of the number of members present. Don't worry if members arrive after the meeting has opened. 3 quick commands, all in the imperative mode, all with action verbs to begin. Could this be subset of, a verb that would start that whole particular step? So begin with a call to order. And then you'd have subsets, note the official time, take a quick tally, do not worry if members arrive late. You could have sub-steps is what I'm saying of all these. These could all be taken in and moved as such. All right, if we were to do that. All right, following the agenda, create headings. Notice this one does break a pattern. We had verbs that began with each step. It's not absolute that you have to do that. We just have to have the most important material at the front of the step. So following the agenda, create headings for each topic to be discussed, and then summarize any points introduced by the chair and the body. Now, here's the interesting part. Where are we actually placing those headings? Sometimes we need to be more explicit, right? Create headings for each topic to be discussed in your notepad or on your notepad, and then summarize any main points introduced by the chair and the body. Identify each speaker by name. Again, this is your call, but sometimes separating the steps, even if they're part of a larger group, can be helpful. Caution, notice the caution is thrown in the middle with white space between these points. Do not try to record comments verbatim. This will only lead to disaster. Well, that's an over, that's a little bit too subjective of a statement. It probably will lead to a problem, right? When you can find you cannot keep up with the spoken word. Very formal diction here too. Maybe there's a simpler way to say that. All right, we go into asking speakers to repeat comments if you feel they are worth recording. It's a little bit subjective. How do we know what the comment is worth recording? I'm not sure. Maybe it's more of a call to order or definition of key terms. It could be possibly spelled out. Capitalize the names of members who have made motions. If asked by the chair, count the number of yes or no votes for each motion, then simply identify whether the motion passes or fails. If a motion is passed unanimously, say so. Note the official time when a member moves to adjourn. Note the person's name. Transfer written notes to the word processor as soon as possible after the meeting. Submit the typed minutes to the body. Interesting, to the body is an old-fashioned way of saying to the group members, and so I might go with more updated language. Transfer notes to the word processor. I would say, you know, digitally transcribe your written notes, right? Would be probably a more direct and more updated way to say it. Note that the end is a neat opportunity to kind of pat the person on the back. It's difficult to take minutes without error, but practice makes the process easier with time. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but go into each meeting with confidence you can do the job successfully. Someone would say, that's dross, who cares, why are you putting it there? And it even might feel a little bit given and, hokey, right? But overall, there's a reason to take advantage of and exit. It's a nice way to put a smile on the end of the process. Some humor might be helpful too. Always be careful as to how much humor. All right, good guys. Let's come back out, and I will encourage you strongly to look at the lecture of PowerPoint highlights from chapter 27 as well. Take care.